Hello, everybody. Welcome to Emporia State's Constitution Day Resources. My name is Dr. Debbie. My full name is Dr. Deborah Hann, and I teach geography here at Emporia State. And so we are going to explore some geography with the United States and Canada. Because did you know that in the time leading up to the Constitution, and that the document that we had before the Constitution that didn't work as well, but part of the Articles of Confederation was a formal invitation from the newly independent United States to Canada to join us. Article 11 of the Articles of Confederation actually invited Canada into a union with us. And what it actually said was that if Canada agrees, all of the parts of Canada will be admitted into the United States, and they will be entitled to the same advantages of being in this union. No one else gets this special privilege, but Canada does. Canada said, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to stay independent. We're going to stay a colony of the United Kingdom. But think about how the geography of our countries would be different if Canada had accepted. So before we get into kind of what it would be like today, let's take a look at what it was then. At the time, what did Canada look like at the time of the Articles of the Confederation and of the Constitution? Well, it was much smaller, just like the United States was. Of course, Canada now stretches from full east to west in North America, but at the time it was just this orange part and this green part that was officially Canada. And this was called Upper Canada, and the orange part was called Lower Canada, which may seem a little weird since we tend to think of north as upper and south as lower. So if it isn't direction, why would the part that's farther north be called Lower Canada? Does it have something to do with elevation? It's a good idea, but no, it actually has to do with the fact that both of these pieces of this colony lay along the St. Lawrence River. And this is lower along the river because it's near the mouth where it hit the ocean. So this part was called Upper Canada, this part was called Lower Canada. And that's all that Canada was at the time in 1791. What about the United States? What was its geography at the time? Well, this is what we looked like. Right? We didn't even stretch the full coast on the East Coast yet. And of course, we were nowhere near the West Coast. All of this had been claimed by Spain and was still full of First Nations and Native Americans. So the two countries looked very different. But think about if they had joined together at that time when they were both smaller, and then we had both moved to the West until we get what it looks like today. Imagine if all of this, all of Canada and all of the United States, and of course Alaska up here, if it was one country. Well, first of all, it would be the world's biggest country because Canada is the world's second largest country and the United States is the third. So it would then, together, it would be bigger even than Russia, which is the world's largest. So it would be significantly different. And it's interesting to think how we would function, how we would be similar and how we would be different, because the two countries are in many ways quite similar, even though we still have differences. So what's the same and what's the different about the two countries? Well, we can look at maps and learn some interesting things about the patterns that we find here. That's what geography is all about, these patterns. So how about the pattern of government? Well, we both have governments that are voted in by the citizens of the countries, but they have different structures and they are led in different ways. We, of course, have a president. There's President Biden, and they have a prime minister. That is Mr. Trudeau. And so our governments are similar, but they're different. So we would have had to find a way to bring those ideas together. What else? What else is similar? Well, what's the majority of language in both countries? The majority of people, what language do they speak? English, of course. Right? We have some significant patches, areas where people speak different languages, right? Spanish is dominant in the southwest of our country. And of course, in Canada, they have Quebec, where French is the majority language. So there are some differences, but overall, it would be handy if we were one country that we speak the same language. Though there are some interesting differences. There's some interesting vocabulary differences in the ways that that Canadians refer to things versus Americans. For example, with the way that we talk about a sweet carbonated beverage. Some of us call it pop, some of us call it a soft drink. In Kansas, we tend to call it pop. Where I grew up in California, it was called a soda. But in Quebec, they call it a soft drink. So we would have to negotiate those kinds of differences, different ways of referring to things. In most of Canada, they call macaroni and cheese Kraft dinner, for example. And while most people call a sweatshirt with a hood on it a hoodie, in this part of Canada, they call it a bunny hug. Isn't that a fun way to refer to it? So there are some interesting language differences. It makes some interesting geography. How about religion? Well, we've got an awful lot of similarities here too. That most of both countries is Protestant. So they are Christian, but they are part of Protestant branches. But there again, we have a significant minority that follows a different religion. Just like we saw with language, in the area around Quebec and in the northeastern part of the United States, Catholicism dominates. So there's definitely some shared patterns that would make having one country really useful and really handy. Agriculture is another place that we can look where, having been joined together, we would be able to complement each other if we were one country. So for example, grains are grown here in the middle of the United States, right? Corn and wheat. And they also grow into the prairie provinces like Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So there would be an area that just same crops move to the north, right? Sheep and cattle are raised across large parts of both countries. But because it's warmer here in the south, we are able to grow things like sugarcane and citrus in the southern part of the United States, and those won't grow in Canada where the climate is colder. And in Canada, there are these, since we have these colder temperatures, things like big parts of forest where you can harvest the lumber. There's a lot more chance to do that. So the agriculture and forestry would complement each other, and some parts of the country would have resources like citrus or cotton or grapes in the southern part of this huge country, and in the northern part there would be maybe more of a focus on timber and lumber. There's also some similarities and differences in the ecoregions, or the plants and animals that grow there. There are some regions like the Rocky Mountains that stretch across both countries, so we share that. But again, there's a whole lot more forest across Canada where it is cooler, and then there's desert down here in the south. So we would again have that complement. There would be some similarities, but there would be differences. So this is an interesting thing to play with, to speculate about what our lives would be like if it was just one big country. So what I'd like you to encourage you to do is try using some of the maps like I shared, and try redrawing the borders of this new combined country. How would you divide it up? Would you call those states, or would you call them provinces, or would you call them something else? Try to find one similarity between the two countries, maybe a crop that's in both, or the way of referring to, I don't know, a food, and then try and find a difference between the two countries. And then finally, what would you name this big giant country that almost happened? And I hope that you have some fun playing with the geography and enjoy Constitution Day.